It's been a while since I've done a pen video, and I'm going to make up for that all today. Don't go away. Hello everybody and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. It has indeed been a while since I've done a pen video, and that's because we were going through the summer here in Nevada, and it's just unbearable. You can't come out here and do something. You really can't unless you're getting paid for it, and that wasn't the case. So it's been a while, but I'm going to make up for it today because not only are we going to make a pen, I'm going to show you all sorts of new tools and equipment and stuff like that. It's going to be a really super fun day. What we're going to be doing today is following up in my last video where I used some wood that I just found in my garage. I've got this walnut blank that I made from scraps out of my garage. We're going to be using that and this EDC, or Everyday Carry Pen Kit, from Penn State, and we're going to make a pen. It's going to be a lot of fun, so let's get to it. So, as I mentioned, I'll be making my EDC pen with a walnut body using some scrap walnut I had in my garage. This kit has only one long body tube, so using that, I'll mark the blank for cutting, leaving it a hair longer than the tube. With the blank marked, I can cut it in half on my bandsaw, but any saw you have will be just fine here. So I want to show you something new for me here. I have a chuck for holding the blank and a drill chuck for the tailstock. This is a great way to drill the blank if you don't have a drill press. I do have a press, and for the most part I'll be using that. But as you can see here, it isn't necessary, and this way is actually vastly cheaper. I'll chuck up the blank, turn the lathe on a fairly low speed, and drill out the hole with the proper bit, in this case 8 millimeters. Now I'll quickly change the lathe and set it up for turning. I remove the two chucks and insert the pen mandrel into the head of the lathe. Here you see the live center for the tailstock, but I now have something better, a pen mandrel saver. The pen mandrel saver has a hole in its end, and the tip of the pen mandrel goes into it. This prevents grinding away the end of your live center. This also applies the pressure to the turning, so you don't need the brass nut anymore. This is very much worth the reasonable cost, in my humble opinion. I have the lathe set up. I have a centered hole drilled right through the middle of my blank, so I can go ahead and glue the tube into it. To glue the tube into the blank, you can use either CA or epoxy. I prefer to use a 5-minute epoxy for a few reasons. One, I believe it's stronger than CA. And I also think it will nicely fill in any voids or gaps between the wood and the tube. The downside is that it takes 3 hours to fully cure. It's a 5-minute epoxy, but that's just the time it takes for it to set up. For me, I'd rather wait and have it be strong. I mix equal parts of the epoxy, and then I thoroughly spread it all over the pen tube. I always make sure to go heaviest on the lead end that I will insert into the blank, so that the glue will push all the way back as I insert the pen tube. I slide the tube in while twisting it to make sure that every part is coated, and I make sure it isn't proud on either end. Then I can go ahead and set it aside to dry. On my drill press, using a barrel trimmer, I've squared up the ends of the blank and trimmed down to the end of the pen tube. So now I can chuck up the blank on the pen mandrel. I throw a couple of spare 7mm bushings on first, and they act as spacers. Then I put on the first kit bushing, then the blank, and finally the last bushing for this pen. I advance the tailstock fitted with the mandrel saver over the end of the pen mandrel. I tighten it and lock it all down. Now I'll set my tool rest nice and close to the workpiece and at a height that will allow my tool to hit the workpiece at the center line. Here, I'm actually a bit high, and it really does make a difference. It's important to take more time than I clearly did when setting your tool rest, as it makes all the difference. I started my path of pen making using hardened steel tools for cutting. They're affordable and a great way to start this hobby, but today I will be trying out my new carbide-tipped tool. This tool is great. The bit is removable, it has 4 sides to it, so I can just loosen it, turn it, and have a nice new sharp tip, and when it's expended, I can just replace it. As I get started, you can see here how my tool is hitting the workpiece a bit too high. With the carbide tool, turn at speeds of around 3200 RPMs and have your tool centered on the workpiece. It will make quick work of this turning. The toughest part when using a carbide bit tool is not being too aggressive so that you don't blow out a giant chunk from the turning. These carbide tools are really great and aggressive, but go slow and take light passes. My first concern is just to get the blank rounded. Trust me, you'll know when you're there. And once round, you can focus on shaping the blank and bringing the ends down so they are just proud of the bushings. Some people like a lot of bulge in the pens. Me, not so much. I prefer a slight bulge in the center or even flat parallel sides. It's a bit harder to make your pens this way, but to me it's worth the added effort. I like that shape. What do you think? With the blank shaped and the ends a smidgen proud, we can now sand the blank smooth and bring the ends flush to the bushings. I'll start with about 320 grit sandpaper and work my way to 600, but you'll have to choose your own starting point based on the condition of the turning. Stop the lathe and sand the long way in between grits to get rid of marks left by sanding on the lathe. It doesn't take much, and it's vital to get a great finish. Now it's time for my favorite part, the finish. Everything has been tried in this hobby, and the most popular for shine and protection is simple CA glue. I'm going to apply about 10 to 14 coats of thin cyanoacrylate glue with a scrap of shop towel. The thin CA will soak right into the wood, sealing it and hardening it. After each application of CA, I give it a spritz of Accelerator, which dries the glue and makes it very shiny. As it says on shampoo bottles, rinse and repeat, in this case about a dozen times, to build up a durable layer that can be sanded and polished. To sand the finish, I'm using micro sanding pads and wet sanding the pen. The pads run through grits starting at 1500 to a very, very fine 12,000. Just go lightly, you don't need to stay very long, and work your way through the grits. Remember, sand laterally between the grits for the best finish. Now I can wrap up my turning with a 3-step polishing wax. I simply add it to the turning blank, buff it off, and then move on to the next wax. This is the first time I've used this wax, and I was amazed at how beautiful the blank came out. I'll put a link to this wax below. Well, now we can put the pen together and see how we did. I have an assembly press here instead of just using the bench vise like I did in the past, but either way will work just fine. I give the ends a quick run over some sandpaper to make sure I remove any excess CA glue, and now we can go ahead and get busy. I'll take the parts out of the kit and lay them out in order according to the instructions, and then I can start pressing the parts together. Follow the directions carefully so you can avoid the mistake that I'm going to make. I forget the pocket clip when pressing on the back end of the pen. Later, I do go back and fix this, but pay closer attention than I was and save yourself some extra hassle.
Hey Siri, set 20-minute timer.
20 minutes, starting now.
What is it? That's the last thing.
Well, there you have it, my EDC pen made with a walnut blank I pulled out of the garbage pile in my garage. It was a lot of fun. It's a beautiful pen. I hope you loved it. If you did, please give this video a giant thumbs up, click subscribe, and make sure you click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my other videos. If you have any questions or comments, as always, leave them down below. I love to hear from you guys. That's it for today, and I'm going to get out of here. Just remember that the wings of transformation are born from patience and struggle. Until next time, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions saying, be good.